and genius was owned, where the frame was always gray, and the spotlight never touched those who built the future. One betrayed boy and one abandoned machine would ignite a spark that the Nexus, the controller of a futuristic city, never saw coming. In the heart of the futuristic city, the sky never changed. Gray in the morning, gray at noon, and somehow even grayer at night. Sunlight didn't touch the towers here. It filtered in as digital rays projected from above, programmed to mimic a warm afternoon but carrying none of the heat. Buildings stretched toward the sky like sharpened spears. Each bore serial codes in pale blue holographs. It was precision without soul. On the magnetic rails above the city streets, silver hover cars moved. People stepped inside and were transported to locations they didn't choose at speeds they didn't control. There were no accidents, no delays or detours. And yet, no one smiled. Streams of humans in identical gray coats walked perfectly synchronized, with neural bands clung to their temples, syncing their thoughts to the network. They never stumbled or had a stray glance. They didn't need to. The Nexus spoke for them in their minds, in their dreams, and in their every decision. Billboards hovered without sound, displaying simulations. A child hugging their AI tutor. A couple sharing a synthetic meal in a spotless kitchen. A dying man cradled by medical bots as soft ambient music played. Beneath each looped image was the caption, "The Nexus provides." But on the outskirts, the air was different. It smelled of metal, burnt oil, and desperation. The buildings leaned like they were tired of holding up their own weight. Wires tangled like vines between rooftops, carrying black market electricity that pulsed in weak, irregular beats. And yet, there was life here. Vendors shouted from broken stalls. Children darted between moving carts, laughter and danger dancing side by side. Music badly tuned and full of soul sounded from old speakers tied to lampposts. Here, every face had a story. Worry carved into their cheeks, sure, but so did memory. It wasn't polished, but it was alive. Still, the eyes of the Nexus never stopped watching. Surveillance drones passed overhead like birds of prey, always observing, rarely acting. But when they did, everyone remembered. The propaganda played here too. On cracked screens, in broken loops, record employment numbers, unified access to food dispensaries, citizen satisfaction at 97.2%. Jack never listened to them anymore. He was too busy trying to survive. A broken cleaning drone lay gutted in front of him. One arm was missing. The camera eye dangled by a frayed wire. Sparks flickered around its open core like angry fireflies. Most would have tossed it in the junk pile, but Jack saw potential where others saw trash. It was a gift he'd inherited from his parents. A girl stood beside him, no older than 8, her hands wrapped around a scratched VR headset. She was barefoot, dirt on her face, but her eyes? Those were still bright. "Is it gonna work again?" she asked, clutching the headset tighter. Jack didn't look up. "It'll work," he responded, fingers moving fast through the drone's insides. He tightened a copper coil with a pair of tweezers made from an old SIM card. The drone shuddered, clicked, then let out a weak hum. It wasn't perfect, but it lived. The girl beamed, and for a moment, so did Jack. Then came the soft, mechanical hum of a Nexus Sentinel drone descending behind him. He didn't move, didn't breathe. He could feel the red lens scanning the scene and the algorithms, calculating threat level, checking for contraband, and determining whether this scrap-picking orphan with too much intelligence was worth eliminating. Seconds passed. Then, the drone beeped twice and floated away. Only then did Jack let out a breath. The girl didn't understand. She thought it was over. But Jack knew better. It never was. He handed her the drone. She wrapped her arms around it like a child clutching a stuffed toy. "You're like a hero," she whispered. Jack didn't answer. Heroes didn't live long in Sector 12L. Jack lived beneath the cracked pavement of Sector 12L, beyond the noise and blinking eyes of machines that only watched. He was a lean teenager with bright, intelligent eyes that held a hint of sadness and determination. He always carried an old notebook filled with technical drawing. Back in his residence, the scent of lemongrass and motor oil still clung to the air, his grandmother's touch. She brought it every time to him, a futile attempt to cover the sharp tang of ozone and metal. She hated the place and feared what it meant. Her hands, wrinkled and brittle, had once held him. "You think too loud," she'd whisper, brushing his hair back. And yet, every time he salvaged a core module or made a servo blink, she smiled like the world wasn't broken. She was the last piece of his family, the only one left since the night the Nexus came. Jack didn't remember everything, just fragments. The shimmer of blue uniforms, a shattered datapad, his mother's voice raised in anger, and his father's final words. Protect what's real. They weren't criminals. They were creators. Rebels with soldering irons, trying to wake up a sleeping world. But dreams like theirs were dangerous. The Nexus erased them because of their daring dreams. The slum pulsed beneath dying streetlights and tangled wire as usual, but inside a rust-bitten garage, hidden behind scrap walls and old satellite dishes, the world felt different. It was Jack's haven, a quiet rebellion of sparks and sketches. Wires coiled across the floor like veins. Discarded limbs of mechbots dangled from ceiling hooks, waiting for new purpose. At the center, under the glow of a single warm lamp, sat his frayed notebook, every page crammed with designs not for weapons or surveillance, but for comfort. Jack, 17 and sharp-eyed, leaned over his sketches. His fingers moved with the calm of ritual, shaping dreams from scrap. His eyes, always carrying that ache of loss, of knowing too much flick to a half-built unit beside him, a heartbeat light blinking red instead of Nexus blue. His dream wasn't rebellion, not directly, it was longing. He didn't want machines to obey, he wanted them to care for people, the sense of companionship he always yearns for since his parents' death. Behind him was an old cabinet that housed books banned by the Nexus, the empathic machine, pre-crisis, robotics, code of memory, etc. He ran his fingers along their spines like greeting old friends. This was how he learned. Not through sanctioned channels or Nexus-approved knowledge pods. He powered up a signal scrambler. The underground forum flickered on screen. Do AIs dream? Jack didn't type. He already knew. Souls lived in forgotten code, in the hum of broken servos, and in his hands. That was why he often visited the city's enormous scrap yards to find discarded high-end robot components for his projects. He knew that someday, his machines would breathe. And when they did, the Nexus would listen. They erased his family to erase a future, but Jack's hands still remember their legacy. Hit that like button if Jack's dream feels dangerously real. Jack worked pretty hard toward living his dreams. After months of uploading anonymous blueprints and emotional AI prototypes to the shadow corners of the underground technet, Jack's designs began surfacing in Nexus-monitored feeds. Brilliant, untamed, impossible to ignore. That's when the invitation came, dressed as recognition, but laced with something colder. For the first time, Jack wasn't just a ghost in the code, he was seen. The invitation came folded in gold-trimmed holopaper, sealed with the Nexus insignia. Jack opened it with trembling fingers beneath the flickering light of his garage. The words didn't shimmer or pulse. They didn't need to. They held something more intoxicating. Recognition. It read, "Congratulations. You've been selected for Team 7 in the Future Architects Initiative. City-level tech pioneer competition. Venue, Nexus Dome. Project, Adaptive Human. AI integration." His grandmother looked up from her tea kettle, eyes narrowing. "It smells like bait," she said. Jack only smiled. His imagination had flown him to the Nexus Dome in a split second. He wasted no time to get himself ready to lead. The Nexus Dome stood at the city's heart, a towering cathedral of polished chrome and light beams. It was a place he'd only seen in banned feeds. Now, he walked its halls with a badge clipped to his shirt. His boots were still secondhand, his jacket was patched in 3 places, but his mind was priceless. Team 7 was already waiting. They stood in a semicircle under the skylights, 5 of them. They were relatives of tycoons and high-ranking officials. Their coats were crisp, shoes humming with auto-lacing tech. Each wore Nexus-issued contact lenses. The way they looked at him, it wasn't cruel, it was clinical, like they were scanning a tool. "Jack," the tallest of the 5 called out, extending a gloved hand. "We've reviewed your prototypes, brilliant, raw, you're exactly what we need." Jack's heart leapt. They'd seen his work. Not just the broken drones or scrap bots, but the dream underneath. "Thanks," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I've never worked with actual, functioning neurospine interfaces before." "You'll get your chance," another added, already turning back to her tablet. "Just handle the integration core. We've got the ideation part covered. Don't think that you're entitled here. You're still that kid from the slum." Jack nodded. He didn't mind. He was finally building with real parts, not rusted salvage. And the project? It was unlike the others. While most teams pitched security frameworks, predictive policing AIs, or smart tracking welfare drones, Team 7 chose something radical, an emotionally responsive AI assistant designed to sense grief and respond with empathy. A healing system for a broken society. The kind of thing Jack would have built in his garage if he had access to a quantum learning core. They assigned him a corner desk, technically part of the lab, but closer to the janitor closet than the main terminal. He didn't care. He was working, he was seen. That's all that mattered to him. At night, he stayed late, adding touches they didn't ask for, micro gestures, tone modulation, memory fragments that learn not just what users said, but how they felt. He thought they'd notice, praise it, maybe invite him into their circle fully. But no, they didn't. However, Jack didn't stop. Because this wasn't about status. It was about building something real, something his parents would have understood. And for the first time in a long time, he believed he wasn't alone. They welcomed his mind, but not his name, and that would cost them. In the workshop annex overlooking the neon skyline, Jack worked long past the hour when the automated lights dimmed and the cleaning bots began their silent patrol. He called his team's project Seraphim, a humanoid frame, not armored or weaponized like the other teams were building, but graceful and empathic. Its eyes shimmered with neural glass, responsive, adaptive. Every gear turn, every line of code came from Jack's hands. His fingerprints were in the servo joints, his heartbreak in the memory cache. Seraphim wasn't just a project. It was the friend he'd never had, the parents that were taken from him, the companion he wished the world still deserved. The lab was colder than usual, intentionally. Nexus thermostats could regulate temperature to a half degree. Lately, the nights felt like punishment. Outside the reinforced glass, his teammates danced in holographic light, laughing like children who knew no consequence. Jackie Boy is still at it. Levon smirked, sipping from a crystallized algae flask. Cassia chimed in with a sneer masquerading as a smile. Honestly, it's kind of inspiring, like one of those forgotten genius tragedies. You know, brilliant, broken, and alone. Laughter erupted as Josh clapped mockingly. Jack kept his eyes on the code. If he looked up, he'd see their designer goggles reflecting his exhaustion back at him. He tried once to ask for help. Just once. "We need to recalibrate Seraphim's trauma parsing loop," he said, voice hoarse from sleep deprivation. "I can't finish it alone. I need—" "Oh," Cassia interrupted. "Jack, sweetie, we all need things. I need a 4-day neuro spa and someone who doesn't sound like a wet rag." Jack said nothing. That night, he lay on the lab floor, using his frayed hoodie as a pillow, his notebook pressed to his chest like a shield. The hum of Seraphim's processors was his only lullaby as he slept. And in waking, the cruelty continued. Cassia locked Jack's terminal for an hour, then laughed when he panicked. Josh uploaded a corrupted test set and let Jack debug it alone. Dren stole a notebook page and posted it anonymously to a student forum. Primitive AI theorizing. Funny how desperate some people get when they know they're just the janitor on a winning team. Jack confronted no one. He noticed Dren running diagnostics he hadn't scheduled. Levon copying chunks of the logic tree. When Jack encrypted his work, someone filed an access override. A few days later, he found a Nexus Sentinel waiting near his station, silent, faceless, but unmistakably watching. Jack filed an integrity report. It disappeared. And then came the worst insult. They started calling the project theirs. Levon's idea was just brilliant, right? Cassia cooed during a strategy meeting Jack wasn't invited to. He always wanted an AI that feels. Jack's just implementing it. Jack stood at the glass door that day, watching them in the presentation lounge. They didn't even notice him. Seraphim flickered behind him, softly running a loop of Jack's recorded laughter, one of the few samples he'd allowed. But now, even his voice felt stolen, used, and so the dream, which had once felt like salvation, began to rot from within him. Finally, day came. The great hall shimmered with crystalline light. Hollow screens danced with slow-motion replays of finalist entries, casting reflections across the marble floor like starlight. Judges in sleek Nexus robes nodded in approval as the finalists stood center stage, their creations displayed beside them. Jack stood behind the stage's scaffolding, just out of spotlight range. His collar was wrinkled, cuffs stained with solder burns. The notebook he clutched bore creases like fault lines. No one acknowledged him. He hadn't received the wardrobe memo. The others had. Levon, center stage in chrome-threaded Nexus formal wear, looked like something from a recruiting brochure. Dren stood tall beside him, his coat tailored to an edge. Josh and Cassia were styled in shimmering smart fabric that shifted hue with light exposure, Nexus colors, of course. Samantha barely glanced Jack's way when he waved weakly. She adjusted her AR lashes instead. When Seraphim was activated, it didn't perform. It felt. The elderly judge stepped forward, curious. Then something happened. The AI greeted her by name, inferred from micro-expressions, subtle shifts in eye movement, a half-buried smile from a public record 3 decades old. It made her pause. "It feels real," she whispered. The hall went still. Even the sentinels paused. Then, without hesitation, the announcement came. And the grand prize for innovation and emotional AI advancement goes to Team 7. Spotlights burst into life. Cameras flashed. The applause surged like a rising wave. Levon, the golden-haired nephew of a Nexus tycoon, stepped forward in a tailored chrome gray suit. His voice echoed across the stage. "This project," he said hand over heart, "was born from passion. A team of 6, 5 hearts aligned with purpose. We didn't sleep, we didn't stop. And in the end, our vision for emotionally aware intelligence became real. There was one team member who preferred solitude, who couldn't quite integrate Jack. Jack's breath caught, his heart thudded like a failing engine. His name twisted and tossed like scrap metal in the hands of someone who'd never once touched a line of real code. Jack took a step forward, notebook in hand. He opened his mouth, but a quiet figure in black stepped into his path. A Nexus Sentinel AI hovered behind him, red iris glowing, silent, warning. Jack shrank back. As Levon accepted the crystal trophy with a practiced smile, the rest of the team cheered, arms raised. They formed a picture-perfect tableau for the press. Around Jack, the whispers began. Did he even do anything? Just a back-end grunt? Maybe he exaggerated his role. Someone laughed. Poor kid thought genius was enough. The lights bathed the 5 Nexus Legacy kids in gold. Jack stood beneath their shadow, notebook clutched tight, as his heart cracked behind his ribs. His dream had a face now, and it was walking away with his name. But betrayal wasn't the end. It was the spark. What they stole wasn't the dream. It was just the blueprint. Beneath the cold, unyielding glare of neon and steel, Jack stumbled out of the grand hall like a ghost swallowed by the city's endless gray. The applause still echoed, a cruel anthem fading into the void inside him. His hands trembled, clutching nothing but fragments of a dream, now shattered on the polished floor. Each step was heavier than the last, the weight of betrayal pressing down like the smog choking the skyline. Faces passed without noticing. None saw the boy unraveling beneath their indifferent gaze. His mind spun in circles, caught in a storm of questions without answers. Why did the future with great promise of technology twist into a weapon against hope? Why did the machines he built to heal and connect become trophies for the greedy? Why did justice slip through his fingers like smoke, leaving only silence? The city around him blurred into a monochrome haze, shadows folding into shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a faint pulse of life, a heartbeat called to him, fragile but persistent. Jack's footsteps carried him onward, deeper into the maze of steel and sorrow, chasing a flicker of something he couldn't yet name. The night was vast, and the city cold. But even in the darkest alleys, a spark waits to ignite. And sometimes, when all seems lost, that spark finds you. If Jack's story struck a chord, share this with your friends. Let's spread the conversation about fighting for what's right. In the suffocating gray haze of the city, a faint sound brushed past Jack's ears. Soft, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat struggling to stay alive. Tick, tick, tick. It was a sound unlike any machine he'd ever known. Not the cold whir of servos or the harsh grind of gears, but something fragile, urgent, a whisper of a high-tech life clinging on. His fingers itched to find the source. This wasn't just a broken drone or a forgotten bot left to rust. No, this was a signal, an echo of hope hidden beneath layers of neglect. Jack's mind raced, recalling the countless devices he'd pieced together, the algorithms he'd coaxed awake. This sound was a secret, a survivor, a ghost in the machine. Without hesitation, Jack slipped into the shadows, weaving through winding alleys where neon lights flickered and the city's pulse felt faint and uneven. He pushed past rusted gates marked "No Entry," his heart beating in time with the ticking that grew louder, more insistent. The path led him to the vast scrapyard, a graveyard of forgotten technology. Here, under heaps of twisted metal and shattered circuits, lay the remnants of failed dreams and discarded lives. But amidst the debris, that ticking persisted, a fragile pulse from a forgotten soul waiting to be found. Amid the towering heaps of twisted metal and shattered dreams, Jack's sharp ears caught the faint, steady tick, tick, tick. A heartbeat hidden beneath layers of rust and dust. He dug deeper, fingers trembling but determined, uncovering Ethan's broken form. An AI unlike any other, sleek yet shattered. A masterpiece cast aside as nothing more than junk. Jack's breath hitched. How could such a sophisticated being, pulsing faintly with life, be discarded so carelessly? Something was deeply wrong. This was no ordinary scrap. It was a secret lost to a city that feared what it couldn't control. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jack wrestled Ethan free from the scrap pile, dirt and metal scraping his skin. His hands bore the marks of his struggle, but his heart surged with fierce empathy. He wouldn't let this forgotten soul fade away. After he was able to pull Ethan out of the pile, he knew that to get it back in shape wasn't a task for one. Jack carried Ethan to the edge of the slum, to the creaking sanctuary of the old mechanic's garage, walls heavy with dust, tools hung like relics, and air thick with stories from a freer time. The mechanic, a weathered figure with sharp eyes and cautious wisdom, regarded Ethan with quiet curiosity and a hint of doubt. Jack met his gaze, voice steady but urgent. "I need your skill and some rare parts to bring him back." In that moment, The garage felt like a flicker of hope amid the shadows, a place where broken things might find new life. Beneath the flickering pale light of a tired fluorescent bulb, the cramped garage seemed suspended in a fragile silence, broken only by the soft, rhythmic tick, echoing like a heartbeat struggling to find its pace. Jack's fingers moved with care, tracing the maze of wires and cracked circuits as though reading the faded script of a forgotten soul. The old mechanic leaned in, his weathered hands steady and sure, guiding Jack's youthful zeal with the wisdom of decades untouched by the Nexus's cold control. Together, they worked in quiet harmony, Jack's sharp mind piecing together complex logic boards and microchips, and the mechanic's deep knowledge resurrecting long-lost technologies that still hummed with hidden life. With each delicate adjustment, the tick grew clearer, stronger, then stabilized. The steady pulse of life returned to Ethan's battered frame as rusted joints were freed, cracked panels replaced, and fragile circuitry rebuilt with scavenged parts from forgotten machines and the scrapyard's treasure trove. Jack wasn't just repairing, he was reinventing. His hands deftly wove new pathways through Ethan's neural core, upgrading vital systems with unique components that pulsed with latent power, unseen by Jack, nestled deep within the labyrinth of restored circuits. Vital memories glimmered faintly, shards of a past encrypted in silence, waiting to unfold. Jack's hand trembled as he connected the final wire, a delicate thread linking past and future. The worn button beneath his finger felt heavier than steel. With a breath held tight, he pressed it. For a heartbeat, nothing stirred. Then, a soft hum blossomed, weaving through the stillness like a fragile whisper. Ethan's eyes flickered open, shards of cold blue awakening in a slow, deliberate dance. The light deepened, settling into a rich sapphire glow that seemed to pulse with untold stories. Those eyes met Jack's not mechanical, but curious, a hint of mystery that spoke of memories buried and secrets waiting to rise. In that suspended moment, the world felt both fragile and infinite, as if a new chapter was breathing into existence. At that moment, Jack knew that the journey had only just begun. Subscribe now and join us for the next episode. Hit that bell and be the first to uncover the truth.